bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels, which is 15 pounds. Just the point of this thing. The dude's huge, right? His shield bearer went ahead of him. Goliath stood. Ready for this? You're going to leave this whole thing off, buddy. Just that part. Yep, just follow it. Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel.
Why are you all coming out to fight? Yeah. I am the Philistine champion, but you are only the servants of Saul.
Hey!
Choose one man to come down here and fight me. If he kills me, then we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves. I defy the armies of Israel today. Send me a man who will fight me.
Okay, that's so good. Okay, let's keep going. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. You should be shaking. Shake. Thank you. And now David was the son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time he was old and well advanced in years. Okay? So put the dentures in and let's do this. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul to the war. The firstborn was Eliab, right over there. The second doesn't matter, the third doesn't matter. But David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's sheep at Bethlehem. For 40 days the Philistines came forward every morning and evening, took his stand. Now Jesse said to his son David, That's perfect. That's a perfect old man move.
Take this sack of cracked wheat and these 10 loaves of bread and run them down to your brothers. Take these 10 wedges of cheese. Gross. To their division. Check in on your brothers and see whether they are getting along all right, and let me know how they're doing. Saul and your brothers and all the Israelites in their war with the Philistines and yoke them.
Oh my God. That's so great. Okay, early in the morning, David left the flock with the shepherd, loaded up, and set out, as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and greeted his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from his lines and shouted his usual defiance. And David heard it. When the Israelites saw the man, they all ran from him in great fear. Now the Israelites had been saying to themselves,
Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall... Sorry.
You're doing good.
Surely he has come out to defy Israel, and it shall become that man who has killed the king. Well, enriched the great riches. Sorry, my notes here.
You're doing good. Dude, you're doing good. Yeah, and we'll exempt his father, right? Did you do that?
Huh?
Did you do the exempt his father from all the taxes?
What version are you in?
North Idaho version. Which one are you in?
I'm lost where I...
It's okay. Are you done? It's probably, I think you're done at your spot anyway, so you actually did perfectly. Put your hands together. That was good. That was awesome. He's playing like 20,000 people. That's really difficult. That's not easy. I can barely play me. Okay. David asked the men standing near him, which were the Israelites. David's now going to say to the Israelites,
So what will a man get for killing this Philistine and ending this defiance of Israel? Who is the pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the armies of the living God?
And they repeated to him what they had been saying and told David.
Sorry, my screen went...
You got it?
Yeah, this is the reward for killing him.
Perfect. That was it. It was a serious one-liner. It was awesome. Okay. When Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him. Burned with anger. Burned.
What are you
and
doing
asked,
around here anyway?
What about those few sheep there? Supposed to be taken care of. I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see the battle. Come on.
I was only asking a question.
He then turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter, and the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. Now David said to Saul, David to Saul. David to Saul.
David to Saul. Got it. Let no man's heart fail because...
No, this is David to Saul. You're Saul, brother. It's okay. It's difficult. You're playing. You got it? Okay, at 32, verse 32, David says to Saul, and you're going to reply in 33.
Don't worry about this Philistine, Saul. I'll go fight him.
That's how he said
able
it.
to go against this Philistine to fight him. With him.
Yes. Thank you.
For you are a youth, and he a man of war.
But David said to Saul,
I've been taking care of my father's sheep and goats. He said, sorry. If a bear comes to steal the lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it to this pagan Philistine too. He has defiled the armies of the living God. Right, come on, dude. Then the Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine.
Go, and the Lord be with you.
Then Saul dressed David. Okay. Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on his sword over the tunic and tried walking around, because he was not used to them.
I can't go in these.
Said
I'm
to Saul.
not used to them.
Said to Saul. So he took them off. Then he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in his pouch of a shepherd's bag, and with a sling in his hand approached the Philistine. Approaching the Philistine. Approached. David is approaching the Philistine. You gotta approach the Philistine. Okay, good. Meanwhile, the Philistine, with his shield bearer in front of him, kept coming closer to David. He looked David over, top to bottom, left to right, and saw that he was only a boy, ruddy and handsome. Very handsome. And he despised him. He said to David,
Am I a dog?
okay, cool. Oh, sorry.
I was waiting for you.
Okay, he said to David.
That you come at me with a stick?
And the Philistine cursed David by his gods.
Come over here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals.
You come to me with a sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you defiled. Today the Lord will conquer you and will kill you and cut off your head. And then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and the animals. And the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, but not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us.
Preach it. Okay, as the Philistines moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with sling and stone without a sword in his hand. He struck down the Philistine and killed him. David ran and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from the scabbard. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. put it together for them. Good acting, guys. You may have a seat. Well done. Well done.